The Polar Loop is finally here, and today we'll do an initial scientific test of this new Whoop strap from Polar. Now, it's actually been so popular that for many of you the shipment will have been delayed because so many people ended up ordering it. But were they right to order one? Well, let's find out. We'll mostly focus on the heart rate tracking performance and if all of these automatic features actually work. Will it, for instance, detect a run when I go out on a run without having my phone with me? Well, today we'll find out. But let's first together make a plan about what things we actually want to test on this new Polar device. So let's head to my kitchen table back there to write down all the tests we need to do for you to make an informed decision about the Polar Loop. So here we are, and there are several things I know for sure I want to test on the Polar Loop. Most importantly, heart rate tracking, which I want to test during running, biking, indoor cycling or spinning, and weightlifting. So let's say weights. So those are the main initial tests I will do. I'll do one for each. But in addition, I'll do some extra exercises with the automatic workout detection. So I want to find out if I go for a run or a bike ride without having my phone on me, without actually explicitly starting it in the app, will it still detect my heart rate and start a workout? And can I later on then classify that as a bike ride or workout and what data is there and is not there? And then finally, I also have my Polar Grid X2 right here that I'll connect to the same account as the Polar Loop. And what I want to find out is what happens if you have two devices connected to the same account. Polar already sort of explained it to us. They do not recommend you go on a run with both your Polar Loop and your Grid X2, for instance, but I still want to try. So let's say dual connect. So those are the main tests. One other thing I'll do is tonight I'll sleep with the Polar Loop on and I'll just take a brief look at the sleep stage tracking quality so we can compare it to my reference. If that works for tonight, some nights are dropouts, but we can at least see what the overall sleep tracking is like for that first night. This will not be a very detailed test. This will be super initial, but still very interesting to look at. So let's say sleep. So those are the main things I want to test, but let's start with one thing, and that's the unboxing and the setup of the device. And I'm quite excited to get started. I really like the principle behind the Polar Loop, the fact that there's no subscription, which there is actually for the Whoop strap, which is why many people are considering switching to this device. I also have this other colored band that actually looks quite nice. So let's set it up. Let's see how easy that connection is, and then let's start with the testing. It's already a bit later. It's now 1 in the afternoon. I might go for a bike ride with a friend as well. So let's see if I can set this up, maybe already go for a run in the rain. And yes, that will be the initial testing I'll do today. Then tomorrow I'll do an indoor cycling session and a weightlifting session, and we'll look at the sleep stage tracking. So here we have it, very minimalistic packaging. And here we have the loop itself. So this is the larger version of the strap. So you get two sizes of strap. So this right here is the ML and this is the SM. And it seems as though the SM is about close to 25 centimeters, whereas the ML, of course, the strap makes it a little different, but is about 4 centimeters longer or so, maybe 5 centimeters in the end. So it has the USB-C type, and let's see how easy it is to set up. Polar Loop Gen 2. I wonder which is the Gen 1. There is actually already a Polar Loop 2, which is this guy right here, which I think was released in 2015. Before that, there was the Polar Loop 1 as well. This doesn't even have a heart rate tracker. You can see right here that the only connection is a charging point. Or this is the original Polar Loop 2 from 2015. Let's see if my Gen 2 Polar Loop will connect. I wonder if the Polar 360, the one for business, is sort of a Gen 1 Polar Loop in their system. So actually, in order for it to fit relatively well, for me, I need to make sure that this metal bit, so this metal part right here, is quite close to the actual measuring unit. If not, it's not gonna fit well. So like this, it fits reasonably well. There's still a little bit of slack here, but this looks fine to me. I can even put it a bit higher. And the strap is relatively stretchy, so that's good. That way I can make it fit well and not move too much on the wrist. So with this low weight, it might actually perform really well. I'm really curious to test it out, so let's get started. Gen 2 is ready for use. There's actually this oval marking right here. And this should be facing the side of my wrist that my thumb is on. So this should always be facing downward like this. Don't know why it matters, but apparently it does matter. So that looks like this, where the oval marking is right here and my thumb is right here. Okay, it's the next day. I did a bunch of tests and there's a few things that are important to share. And there are also some weird behaviors that I notice sometimes. Let me start off with the automatic workout detection. So working out without having your phone with you. First off, you need to set the sensitivity for this. Basically, this calibrates how quickly anything you do is classified as a workout. If you set it to low, even something like a household chore could be classified as a workout. And if it's set higher, the higher it's set, the higher that's cut off. So I had it set to medium and more or less every workout I did was indeed detected. But second, the weird thing is I even got automatically detected workouts even when I was already actively tracking with the loop connected to my phone. So I'd started a workout on the phone with the loop. I'd finished it, I'd stopped it, and then I would still get a tracked workout by the loop as well. So I got a double record that way. And this I found surprising since this leads to duplicate recordings, even if you already used the loop itself and both recorded with the loop. Now maybe this will still be changed with future updates, but I found it kind of weird. Oh, and of course, as we expected, when you use both the loop and the Grid X2, for instance, I did end up with double records as well, but this is expected and this is how Polar programmed it. This is just a choice they made. I just didn't expect these double workout recordings when just using my loop. What I did not try yet is to activate a workout on the phone with the loop, but then leave the phone behind. So I either did an automatic workout detection or I actually actively tracked with the loop and kept my phone on me. When you start a workout, you actually have to indicate if you're going to take your phone with you or not. So if you're just going to go running without your phone, but you still want to actively start it, or you're actually going to keep your phone with you so you have GPS signal. By the way, and I found this out the hard way, if you want to start a workout with the loop on your phone, the first time you do it, you need to assign the loop as the heart rate sensor. Since this isn't automatically picked for you, you really have to set that as your main heart rate sensor. You can do that by tapping these 3 horizontal lines when you're starting your workout, and the settings are there. By the way, for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Rob and I'm a postdoctoral scientist specializing in biological data analysis. The performance of the automatic workout detection was quite okay overall, though definitely not yet perfect. I might have to tweak the sensitivity maybe, because for my bike ride it did detect most of it, but when I took a longer break closer to the end, it stopped detecting altogether and I didn't record that last part of my workout. And as I already mentioned, I did get automatic workout detection on top of the workout that already started with the loop. Oh, and one last weird thing, the first run I did with the loop was indeed auto-detected, so I didn't start it on the phone, and it does show up on the phone app, but online it isn't visible, so I couldn't analyze the data or download it, which is kind of weird and also annoying. So I did a whole workout that isn't in this review. I don't know if this is because this was the first workout, I didn't have any issues afterwards, but that's what it is. And talking about data, let's take a look at the heart rate tracking performance. And as always, we'll start with what is typically one of the easier exercises for a device to track indoor cycling. However, as you will see, this is actually one of the worst exercises that the Polar Loop tracked. So we have the reference device in blue-green and the heart rate according to the Polar Loop in red. And we can see 2 artifacts here. The first is that it fully missed this peak in my heart rate, and that for all the other intervals there was quite a delay in picking up an increase in heart rate, but also delay in it picking up on a decrease in heart rate. So overall, honestly, quite poor performance, but we can actually quantify this in terms of a correlation. And at the same time as looking at the correlation, we can also make an overview plot where we look at the agreement of the heart rate according to the reference right here on the horizontal axis and the Polar Loop along the vertical axis. And if they would perfectly agree, all dots should be on this blue line right here. But it's pretty clear they're not all close to the blue line. There's a big cloud of points here below the blue line. Those are the moments when it had a delay in picking up on an increase in heart rate. And the ones above it are when it had a delay in picking up on a decrease in heart rate. Sometimes it's correct, so there are some points here and some points here. But it's quite often not correct, leading to a low correlation of 0.59. And we can actually compare this to the competition. And this is that comparison where the better devices are towards the top right and the Polar Loop is marked in red right here. And it's really among some of the poorer performing devices. Again, this is just based on a single session, so the results might change. However, it's actually not that far from some other Polar devices with the same sensor, like the Grid X2, the Grid X2 Pro, and the Polar Vantage V3. So it's not a completely unexpected result, though I do expect results will improve a little bit over time, maybe getting close to this area right here of a correlation of 0.85, 0.9. But I'll be doing more tests this week and then we'll find out. Let's next take a look at an exercise where the Polar Loop actually did a lot better running. And let's start with that overview plot for running, where we now at least have a somewhat higher correlation at 0.88. Still not great, but definitely better. And there are more points close to the blue line now, though there's still quite a few points away from it as well. And here I'm really interested in looking at the run itself. Now, as I said before, I actually did 2 runs, one longer one and a shorter one. And I actually only did that shorter one because the long one was lost. I couldn't export that data for some reason. It was visible in my mobile app, but not on the online app. So I have no idea what's going on there. So it's a very limited test, but let's take a look. And this running result actually isn't half bad. Most of the time, the red line of the Polar Loop does agree quite well with the reference in blue-green. There are some deviations like this area here, and it also misses some of the dips in my heart rate. But this might actually be good enough for many of us. At least it won't influence our training in a negative way. We will make the same decisions whether we tracked our heart rate with the reference device or the Polar Loop. But let's compare this to the competition. And that's this overview right here. So the Polar Loop is again marked in red and it's sort of in the middle of all devices. Let's see what other Polar devices are close. We have the Polar Vantage M3 with the same performance, and also the Polar Ignite 3 is quite close. All 3 of these had similar performance. And we have the Polar Grid X2 also not too far away. So overall it falls somewhere where we would expect. This would be good enough for me. And there are still many devices which are doing a lot better. If we take, for instance, the Amazfit Helio strap, but worn on the biceps, also the Amazfit Helio strap on the wrist right here, or the Whoop strap on the biceps, all of these are doing better than the Polar Loop. But before looking at these cycling results, let's talk about running. I'm relatively new to running. I've been doing it for about a year. I'm a cyclist by training, and I had no idea how to make running plans, what an interval run was, when to plan my long runs. All of this was new to me. Luckily, I found the Runner app, which is my favorite app for running. It both makes a running plan for me personalized to my fitness and my goals, whether I'm running a half marathon, a marathon, or I'm just planning for a 5K. And it also gives me live coaching during my runs. Now, if you're interested in that as well and you want to level up your running, check out my affiliate link up here or down here for a 2-week free trial, and you'll be supporting the channel at the same time. Thanks for considering, and let's get back to the results for cycling. Now, these look okay at best. Luckily, most points are at least somewhat close to the blue line, though there are also quite a few here below it and some above it. I think the correlation value might actually make it seem worse than it actually is, but let's actually take a look at that cycling session. So this is that bike ride right here. It was automatically tracked, so I didn't take the phone with me. And most of the time, actually the red line of the Polar Loop does overlap reasonably well with the Polar H10 reference. However, one thing you will notice is that near the end here, my heart rate wasn't detected by the Polar Loop. So here the automatic workout detection didn't detect my cycling. And there is still some deviation. For instance, here I detected a too low heart rate. Also near the end, we have some weird heart rate drop off that should have been much faster. Overall though, actually not terrible, but maybe I just want it to be good because I would like the Polar Loop to do well, because that would give many people who aren't willing to pay the subscription fee for Whoop a good alternative. What do you think? Is this good enough performance? We can actually again put this into perspective by comparing it to other devices, and that's displayed here. So it's somewhere in the middle of all devices again. So I have the Polar Loop in red here. And what devices are close? Well, the Polar Pacer Pro actually did worse in my testing. The same goes for the Vantage V3. Of course, these I also tested more on my city bike, whereas now I went on a road bike ride. I actually took my gravel bike because it was raining. And the Polar Grid X2 also isn't too far away. So it mostly makes sense. I might have misspoken before. The Polar Loop doesn't have the same sensor as these more high-end Polar devices. It has the same as the Polar Pacer Pro, but it has a new algorithm that is also used in the more high-end devices of Polar. So it's a bit of a mix of the previous generation of hardware with the newest generation of firmware. So it's hard to say how it should place, but it's somewhere in the line of what I would expect. Not great heart rate tracking, but not the absolute worst. Though again, the Amazfit Helio strap worn on the biceps definitely did better. And we can actually zoom in a bit to read that a bit better. So here we have the Amazfit Helio strap on the biceps, and we also have the Whoop strap on the biceps and the Amazfit Helio strap on the wrist. All of these get a better correlation than this very initial test of the Polar Loop. And also check out some other reviewers. Now to close off, let's take a look at weightlifting. And I'm not even going to calculate correlations or anything because it's basically what we see for many devices. It's just not able to track my heart rate during weightlifting. When I do a set of exercises, my heart rate increases, as you see by these blue lines or green lines, whatever the color is. But the red line of the Polar Loop just isn't able to follow along. It just cannot track my heart rate when there's so much tension on my wrist. So what do you think of these results that I've just shown for the Polar Loop? Is this good enough or not? But of course, I'll give you my opinion. I would call that a mixed performance at best, maybe. And the weirdest thing is the performance was worst for indoor cycling, which is usually the easiest exercise to track. Now, I do have to mention here that Polar sensors tend to perform quite poorly on me, so I'll also be testing the Polar Loop on Raphael to see if the results are better with him. And here I think a biceps band could be a real solution. So once Polar releases that, I'll be testing that for sure. And I might even hack something together with some bands that I have to create a temporary biceps band. Finally, I do have to mention again, this is a very initial test, so we need more data to be sure. Maybe this first spinning session was a fluke. And I would also recommend checking out some other reviewers like DC Rainmaker, Desfit, Matt Legrand, and of course Chase the Summit. Now, what about sleep stage tracking? Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a good reference night last night. I had some issues, so testing that will have to wait. But I'll give you an update on that as soon as I can, so subscribe not to miss that video. But what I can show you is how Polar generally performs in my testing and in scientific literature, because as far as I know, they still use the same sleep staging algorithm on the Polar Loop as they've done for other devices as well. But before doing that, if you want to support the channel, there's multiple ways of doing that. Because I'm running this channel next to my full-time job as a scientist and I buy many of the devices myself and it's not cheap. One way of supporting is by becoming a YouTube member, which is basically like Patreon on YouTube. This gives you early access to some of my videos, and this is the most direct way of financially supporting and covering some of the costs associated with running this channel. Another good way of supporting is by using one of my affiliate links down below, many of which help you as well by giving you the best discount possible. Or if you order a lot on Amazon, if you can click or bookmark my Amazon affiliate link by pressing Command or Control D. If you click it before any purchase, it doesn't cost you any extra, but it does support the channel financially. But enough about that, let's get back to the testing. And these are the results from many scientific studies that I sort of compiled together with the average agreement over the 4 stages, so deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep, and awake along the horizontal axis, and the worst out of those along the vertical axis. And the Polar devices, so these are quite old devices, are marked in pink right here, but I expect that still the same or very similar sleep stage tracking algorithm is used in the Polar Loop. We have Garmin in red, Xiaomi in this sort of blackish color, Fitbit/Google in green, Whoop in blue, and then Aura right here in pinkish, and also the Apple Watch in this sort of cyan color. And the better the devices, the more to the top right they are. Now this is often a slightly older firmware, but the general trends really agree well with what I've seen before. Aura and Apple are really good, so the newer Aura sleep tracking algorithm and Apple, then Fitbit and Whoop are sort of second tier. And Polar is below that, maybe just slightly better than Garmin, though it's hard to say, and Chinese brands generally don't do very well. But I did test many devices on myself. This is limited to my data for my body, so we don't know how it extrapolates to others for sure, but it does agree very well with these results. And here we have an overview of the performance of many of the devices I've tested in the past. And again, we want the devices to be as far to the top right as possible. Now the best brands out there are 8 Sleep, Apple, Aura, and also Nuku Hour Sleep 2. These are really the best ones out there. And in the second tier, we have the Whoop strap and Fitbit. These are the only ones I would currently recommend for sleep stage tracking. But Polar is somewhere here in the middle also for me. Let's actually make all other devices slightly transparent. And here are some of the Polar devices I've tested in the past. And they're all roughly in this area right here. Now, these are also limited testing on me for just a few nights, but the general patterns are pretty clear. They're okay at best. They're not as bad as some of these devices here. actually quite close to many Garmin devices, but not as good as many of the other devices. Now, if sleep tracking is very important to you, I would recommend one of those 6 brands I mentioned before. My favorite sleep improvement device is the 8 Sleep Pod, which can actively heat and cool each side of the bed independently and track your sleep reliably, also your heart rate and heart rate variability. So it does really well in my testing. So it's something that goes around your mattress and can track you without you wearing anything on your body. And it's one of the best ones at that. But for me, the cooling and heating are super important because I like to sleep at a relatively cool temperature. But in winter, I can have it heat a little bit, and in summer, I have it cool it down a lot. But when I have a partner, she can heat or cool her side independently. So I love it, but it is super expensive. If you want the best discount possible and support the channel at the same time, I have an affiliate link up here or down here. Now, Apple Watches also do really well, but only work on iOS. So that's, of course, a limitation. You can also take an Oura ring, but like the 8 Sleep Pod, that also has a subscription attached, and the Whoop strap does as well. And another alternative is Fitbit, which does reasonably well in my testing, but can be much cheaper. And of course also the Pixel Watch, which uses the exact same sleep stage tracking algorithm as Fitbit does. But I think again that Polar probably won't perform well, but we have to see how the Polar Loop actually performs. My suspicion is that the sleep tracking will be more or less identical, but maybe we will be positively surprised. So Polar generally definitely isn't the worst sleep stage tracker out there, potentially a little bit better than Garmin, but definitely not one of the best. But I'll of course confirm if I get the same results with the Polar Loop. Now, based on this very initial testing, there are a few things I would like to see improved on the Polar Loop. The first is that the automatic workout detection is not happening if you're already using the device itself for active tracking. These just lead to unnecessarily duplicate workout records for me. I'm not sure if this is because of early firmware, but it's just kind of annoying. Second, I think a biceps band definitely could really improve heart rate performance. Polar does struggle on me specifically a lot, so take that into account when evaluating all the results that I showed you, but I hope a biceps band can solve these issues. And then finally, I'm hoping that the updated app will make the whole experience a lot nicer. At the moment, if I'm not taking into account the price, I would prefer the Whoop strap over the Polar Loop. And if you don't want a subscription, another alternative is the Amazfit Helio strap. And I do think it's still a bit better than the Polar Loop, both in terms of heart rate tracking performance and in the experience of the app. But of course, app experience is partially a personal opinion. But again, Polar was very upfront that it would take some time for the app to be updated, so they're still hard at work on this. I'll be releasing a longer term review of the Polar Loop in a week or so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you want to support, there's a bunch of affiliate links in the description below. You can become a YouTube member, and I think you will like this video on the Amazfit Helio strap or this video on the Whoop strap.